Can a Netflix movie be so disturbing that finishing it feels like a mistake? Some horror films scare you for a night, but these movies crawl under your skin and stay there. This countdown is not about cheap jump scares. It is about trapped bodies, broken minds, brutal survival, cursed images, and stories that push viewers past comfort. And by the time we reach number 1, you may wish you had stopped earlier. Number 15, Run Rabbit Run, 2023. Some horror movies scream at you. This one quietly watches you fall apart. Run Rabbit Run begins like a familiar psychological thriller, with a mother noticing strange behavior in her young daughter. But the real disturbance is not in the child's actions alone. It is in the way the film slowly turns motherhood, memory, and family history into something claustrophobic. Sarah is a fertility doctor, someone whose entire life is connected to birth, identity, and control. Yet inside her own home, control begins slipping through her fingers. Her daughter starts speaking and behaving in ways that suggest an old wound has reopened, and every small moment becomes loaded with suspicion. The film does not chase easy shocks. It builds dread through silence, discomfort, and the terrifying idea that the past never really stays buried. Some viewers may find it slow, but that is exactly the trap. It does not attack quickly, it tightens. And by the end, the scariest question is not what is haunting this family, but what this family has been hiding. Number 14. I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, 2016. This is not the kind of ghost story that jumps from the shadows. It sits in the room with you until the air feels wrong. I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House is a slow, icy gothic nightmare built around atmosphere, memory, and the fear of being alone with a story that may still be alive. The film follows Lily, a live-in nurse caring for an aging horror novelist inside a remote old house. On the surface, very little seems to happen, but that is the point. Every hallway, every creaking wall, every quiet glance feels like a warning. The movie plays with the idea that houses remember pain, and that fiction may sometimes preserve something more dangerous than imagination. It is not for viewers who need constant action. It is for viewers who understand that dread can be more powerful than shock. By refusing to explain too much too quickly, the film becomes almost hypnotic. Its horror is delicate, cold, and strangely mournful, like a whisper you wish you had never heard. Number 13, 1922-2017. A man thinks he can bury one terrible decision in the soil, but guilt has a way of crawling back up. 1922, based on Stephen King's novella, is one of Netflix's bleakest slow-burn horror dramas because it does not treat evil like something supernatural at first. It begins with ordinary bitterness: a farmer, his wife, a piece of land, and a marriage poisoned by resentment. Wilfred James convinces himself that murder is practical, almost necessary, and that is what makes the story so unsettling. He is not a monster from another world. He is a man who makes one unforgivable choice and then watches his life rot around it. The film uses rats, decay, isolation, and rural emptiness to turn guilt into something physical. Every shadow feels like punishment. Every quiet moment feels infected. What makes 1922 disturbing is not just the crime, but the slow collapse afterward. It suggests that some sins do not need police, prisons, or witnesses. Sometimes the punishment begins inside your own mind and never stops digging. Number 12, The Ritual, 2017. The woods in this movie do not feel haunted. They feel hungry. The Ritual starts with grief, guilt, and fractured friendship, then drags those emotions deep into the Scandinavian wilderness where civilization disappears, one tree at a time. 4 friends go hiking after a tragedy, hoping the trip might honor the dead and heal what remains between them. Instead, the forest becomes a psychological maze. Strange symbols appear, sleep becomes unsafe, something ancient seems to be watching them, and the deeper they go, the more the group's private fears begin turning against them. What makes the film effective is the way it blends creature horror with emotional damage. The monster is frightening, yes, but the real wound is survivor's guilt, the feeling that one cowardly moment can follow a person forever. The cult elements add a brutal mythic edge, making the forest feel like a place where old gods still demand payment. The Ritual works because it understands one terrifying truth. Sometimes the thing chasing you outside is only powerful because of what is already broken inside. Number 11, Bird Box, 2018. This movie takes away the one thing horror audiences rely on most, the ability to look. Bird Box turns sight itself into a threat, and that simple idea gives the film its unnerving power. In this apocalyptic thriller, an unseen force drives people into violent madness the moment they see it. The world collapses, not through explosions or monsters tearing through streets, but through something far more disturbing: panic, confusion, and the terrifying realization that survival now means moving through life blind. Sandra Bullock's character, Mallory, becomes the emotional center of the chaos, trying to protect two children in a world where trust is dangerous, and even opening your eyes could be fatal. The film became a cultural phenomenon because its central fear is instantly understandable. We all want to see danger coming. Bird Box asks what happens when seeing is the danger. Its most disturbing moments are not always the loudest. They come from helplessness, uncertainty, and the brutal pressure of protecting innocence when the world itself has become unreadable. Number 10. No One Gets Out Alive, 2021. Some haunted houses want to scare you. This one feels like it wants to swallow you whole. No One Gets Out Alive follows Ambar, an undocumented immigrant searching for safety, work, and a chance to survive in a city that already treats her like she is invisible. That real-world vulnerability makes the horror hit harder. When she moves into a cheap boarding house, the place feels wrong from the beginning. Dim rooms, strange noises, locked doors, and men who seem to know more than they say. But the film is not just about a supernatural presence hiding in the dark. It is about exploitation, poverty, desperation, and how easily vulnerable people can be trapped by systems that pretend not to see them. The horror grows from both the building and the world outside it. That combination gives the movie a grim, emotional weight. It is disturbing because Ambar is not simply fighting a monster. She is fighting a situation designed to leave her with no safe exit. And that makes the title feel less like a warning and more like a sentence. Number 9. Smile 2, 2024. A smile should be comforting. This movie turns it into a threat you cannot unsee. Smile 2 takes the curse concept of the original film and pushes it into a louder, crueler, more public nightmare. This time, the terror follows a famous pop star, which makes the breakdown feel even more exposed. She is not just losing control in private, she is unraveling under lights, cameras, fans, managers, and an industry that treats every emotion like part of the performance. That is what makes the film so disturbing. The curse does not only attack her mind, it weaponizes fame, pressure, trauma, and the fear of being watched while falling apart. Every grin feels wrong. Every room feels unsafe. Every person might be real, or they might be another trick created by a mind under siege. The film works because it understands modern anxiety, being surrounded by people and still completely alone. Its horror is polished, nasty, and relentless, but the deeper punch comes from watching someone who is expected to entertain others while something inside her is screaming. By the end, the smile is no longer a facial expression. It feels like a warning label. Number 8. His House, 2020. This is the rare horror movie where the ghost is terrifying, but the guilt is worse. His House follows a refugee couple from South Sudan who are placed in a decaying house in England after escaping war, loss, and impossible choices. At first, the setup feels familiar. Strange sounds, cracked walls, shadows, and something moving where nothing should be moving. But the movie quickly reveals that the real horror is not just inside the house, it is inside memory. Bol and Rial are trying to survive in a country that barely welcomes them while carrying a past too painful to speak about. The supernatural elements become a brutal reflection of trauma, grief, and the price of survival. That is why the film hits differently from ordinary haunted house stories. It does not use pain as decoration. It builds its entire nightmare around what people carry after escaping disaster. The house becomes more than a location. It becomes a courtroom, a prison, and a reminder of what cannot be left behind. His House is disturbing because it scares you, then makes you understand the sadness behind the scare. That emotional weight is what makes it unforgettable. Number 7. Incantation, 2022. Some horror films feel like you are watching a curse. This one feels like you are helping spread it. Incantation became one of Netflix's most talked-about found-footage nightmares because it does something deeply uncomfortable. It pulls the viewer into the ritual. The story follows a mother trying to protect her daughter after breaking a religious taboo years earlier. But the film is not satisfied with simple possession horror. It uses documentary-style footage, chanting, symbols, fragmented memories, and direct viewer involvement to create the feeling that the screen itself is unsafe. That is the genius of the movie. It understands that fear becomes stronger when the audience feels implicated. You are not just observing the danger. The film keeps suggesting that your attention may be part of the problem. The emotional center is a mother's desperation, but around that is a thick atmosphere of religious dread, guilt, and cosmic punishment. Every reveal makes the story feel larger and more hopeless. Incantation is disturbing because it does not give viewers clean distance. It blurs belief, performance, and panic until the movie feels less like entertainment and more like something you were warned not to open. Number 6. Apostle, 2018. The island in Apostle looks remote at first. Then it starts to feel like a place the world abandoned for a reason. Set in the early 20th century, the film follows Thomas Richardson as he travels to a hidden Welsh island to rescue his kidnapped sister from a religious cult. But this is not a simple rescue thriller. The deeper Thomas goes, the more the island reveals itself as a rotten system built on devotion, fear, punishment, and secrets. What makes Apostle so unsettling is its mix of folk horror and brutal human control. The cult does not feel cartoonish, it feels desperate, organized, and terrifyingly convinced of its own righteousness. The violence is harsh, but the psychological horror is just as important. People here have surrendered their judgment to belief, and that makes every friendly face dangerous. The film also adds a strange mythic layer, suggesting that something older than the cult may be trapped beneath all the rituals. That combination of fanaticism, survival, and ancient horror gives Apostle a dirty, feverish intensity. It is disturbing because it shows how easily faith can become machinery and how quickly people become fuel. Number 5. The Call, 2020. One phone call should not be able to destroy your life, but this Korean thriller turns time itself into a weapon. The Call begins with a brilliant hook. Two women living in the same house, but in different decades, connect through an old cordless phone. At first, the impossible connection feels mysterious, even useful. Then the story reveals its trap. Changing the past does not fix everything. It creates new dangers, new victims, and a terrifying power imbalance between two people who should never have met. The film works because it turns the butterfly effect into something personal and vicious. Every conversation carries consequences. Every small decision can rewrite a life, erase a truth, or unleash something worse. The central conflict becomes a battle of intelligence, manipulation, and survival across time. What makes it disturbing is not graphic shock alone, but the feeling that reality is unstable. The ground keeps shifting under the characters, and the viewer is forced to question what version of the story will survive next. The Call is tense, stylish, and cruelly clever. Its scariest idea is simple. The past is not dead, and sometimes it is listening. Number 4. Creep and Creep 2, 2014 and 2017. The scariest monster on Netflix might be a lonely man with a camera and too much eye contact. Creep and Creep 2 do not need haunted houses, demons, or massive special effects to disturb you. Their horror comes from something painfully human, the fear of being polite to the wrong person for too long. The first film follows a videographer who accepts a simple job from a strange client, only to realize that every awkward joke, every uncomfortable confession, and every weird little pause may be part of something darker. What makes the film so effective is how they weaponize social discomfort. You keep waiting for the obvious danger, but the real terror is in the uncertainty. Is this person unstable, lonely, manipulative, dangerous, or all of it at once? The sequel becomes even more unsettling because it plays with performance, ego, and the sick need to be understood. These movies are disturbing because they feel possible. They turn Craigslist-style trust, casual work, and forced friendliness into a nightmare. By the end, the camera does not feel like evidence. It feels like bait. Number 3. Gerald's Game, 2017. This movie begins with a private mistake and turns it into one of the most suffocating survival nightmares on Netflix. Gerald's Game, based on Stephen King's novel, traps its main character in a situation so simple that it becomes horrifying almost immediately. Jessie is handcuffed to a bed in a remote cabin after a bedroom game goes terribly wrong, leaving her alone, unable to move, and forced to confront thirst, pain, fear, hallucinations, and a terrifying figure that may or may not be real. But the real power of the film is not just the physical trap, it is the emotional one. As Jessie struggles to survive, buried trauma begins surfacing, turning the room into a battlefield between memory and endurance. The film is disturbing because it refuses to let the viewer look away from helplessness. Every sound matters. Every shadow feels threatening. Every second becomes heavier. It also contains one infamous body horror moment that many viewers never forget, not because it is cheap shock, but because it feels earned through desperation. Gerald's Game is not just about escaping handcuffs. It is about escaping the version of yourself that fear tried to bury. Number 2. The Platform, 2019. This is not just a prison movie. It is a brutal experiment in how fast civilization disappears when hunger enters the room. The Platform is one of the most disturbing films on Netflix because its concept is simple, cruel, and impossible to ignore. Inside a vertical prison, food descends on a platform from the top floor to the bottom. The people above eat first, often with disgusting greed, while those below are left with scraps, panic, or nothing at all. The horror is not just cannibalism, violence, or starvation. It is the social idea behind it. Everyone understands the system is broken, but almost nobody changes their behavior when they benefit from it. That is what makes the film feel so vicious. It turns class, inequality, survival, and selfishness into a nightmare you can understand in seconds. The lower the characters go, the more human dignity gets stripped away. The movie is graphic, grim, and often hard to watch, but its strongest weapon is the metaphor. The Platform asks a nasty question. Are people cruel because they are trapped, or does the trap simply reveal what was already there? Number 1. The Perfection, 2018. This is the kind of movie that starts like a classy psychological drama, then suddenly reminds you that elegance can hide something rotten underneath. The Perfection follows Charlotte, a once promising music prodigy who reconnects with the elite academy that shaped her past, only to find another gifted young cellist now standing in the spotlight she left behind. At first, the film feels like a tense rivalry story, full of polished rooms, perfect performances, and quiet jealousy. But then, it twists hard, turning ambition, trauma, obsession, and revenge into something far more disturbing. What makes the movie so effective is how it keeps changing shape. Just when you think you understand who the victim is, who the villain is, and what the story is really about, the film pulls the floor away. The horror is not only physical, it is psychological, institutional, and deeply personal. It asks how much damage can be hidden behind prestige, talent, and respectability. Some viewers find it shocking because of its sudden brutality. Others remember it because of how viciously it exposes control and exploitation. The Perfection earns this top spot because it does not just disturb you with one scene. It keeps rewriting your trust until the final note feels poisonous. Netflix lists it as an 18-plus horror film starring Allison Williams, Logan Browning, and Steven Weber. And that is the real danger of these movies. They do not just scare you while they are playing. They follow you after the screen goes dark. Some disturb through blood, some through silence, and some through ideas you wish you never understood. So be honest. Which one would you watch alone tonight? And which one are you skipping forever?